Hadi, Dinizay, Saikosay, Skaizay. See Mike Bote is at name. Day 2. How's everyone doing? All right. And especially after last night's display of amazing talents. So I know that it's hard to get back to business, but let's do it. So again, I'm Mike Bote, the Chief Operating Officer of Care Sekani Family Services. This is my second AGA in this role. And I stand here with so much gratitude, so much pride, so much appreciation for the trust and confidence that you've given me, and a deeper appreciation of the work that we do every day together. And I look forward to sharing the progress and highlights of everything that happened in the last year to our nations, chiefs, board and staff, Snatchalia. Last year, I began my presentation by talking about my role, the Chief Operating Officer role. What is that? It is a new role that CSFS never had before. And I think with this picture in the slide, it would be straightforward for me now to explain what that is. Because at that time, honestly, I was still figuring it out. So on the left side, you will see Warner Adam, our CEO, with Earl Stevenson, who is the lawyer of PEGWIS, Child and Family Services. And that was taken at the event, the first ever jurisdiction legislative forum. So you can see, in a nutshell, Warner's role is to take us to the finish line to achieve jurisdiction. That's what we are all fighting for. That's what we are all working hard for. On the right, you can see me at the Chislara Nation office grand opening, where I highlighted, on behalf of CSFS, our collaborative work on CHRT 41 projects. Specifically, for this endeavor, Jason's team, Housing, Capital and Infrastructure, or HCI, supported Chislara in submitting an application for CHRT 41 for the reimbursement of $11 million for their admin office. That $11 million would claim 100% of the gym, commercial kitchen, and 10 offices dedicated to CSFS service delivery areas, like Jordan's Principal and Child and Family Services. So you can see now the CEO and COO roles in action. Warner's jurisdiction, I am operations and service delivery excellence focused. Together, this model will help us build the plane as we fly it. I would be amiss if I don't talk about my team, my source of pride and joy, the reason I'm here, the reason I still have this job. I just have a group of talented people, and I couldn't be prouder for having them working along with me. Since last year, our lineup has evolved. Cheryl Thomas is now the Executive Director of Child and Family Wellbeing. Following the reorganization, I'll expand on shortly. Michelle Jones has stepped in as the Acting Executive Director of Justice. Rodney Brown has joined us as a project manager, strengthening our capacity in jurisdiction readiness, capital builds, and nation projects. Alongside them, I continue to rely on Marlena Mann, Communications and Technology ED, Jason Morgan, Housing, Capital and Infrastructure, or HCI, Executive Director, and Amanda Kai, the ED of HR, Organizational Development and Learning. And of course, Taylor Boucher, the Strategic Admin Lead for the COO Office. She's the reason I can keep my appointments and I remember to do what I need to do. Thank you. Again, I would like to also express my special gratitude to Marlena Mann and the comms team. If all of you can stand up, the comms team. And if we can give them a round of applause for their outstanding effort and commitment. You have no idea how much they have been working so hard in the background to ensure that we have the amazing experience we're having right now for this AGA. Thank you so much. What happened last year? So let me start with talking about some milestones for the Child and Family Wellbeing Department. So two of the biggest priorities this year for this department would be the C6 delegation expansion and the reorganization. So let's frame where we are today. I'm a very visual person, and I tend to explain things better when there's a visual guiding me. So if you look at the left side of this graphic, this is where we are today. We are a delegated agency up to C3 and C4. So there are different levels of delegation. We are at C4 right now. This means we have various services, including guardianship and post-majority supports. But the biggest limitation is child safety still rests with MCFD. That means we don't have the authority, we don't have the ability to even assess any child safety concerns right now. It's MCFD using their own lens in deciding should we remove the child or not? And that's a big problem. So if you go to the right, to the middle section of the graphic, you can see that we are now in the transition state. We are preparing to expand into C6 delegation while we are on a parallel basis drafting Cure and Sekani law that will ensure that the way we make decisions on child safety matters are based on Cure and Sekani values and principles. And if you can recall what Warner said in his presentation yesterday, we're at 95% completion rate for our laws already. On the right side, that's what we are all working hard for. That's the reason I wake up every day filled with gratitude in undertaking my work. That's the future state. That's jurisdiction. In plain terms, no more BC government, no more MCFD deciding on behalf of our nations. It will be the Courier and Sekani legislation that would tell us what to do, that would tell us, is child removal even necessary? Or is there a more non-adversarial way to ensure the well-being of the child and the family of the child? So one of the key mandates of my role as Chief Operating Officer is to ensure that Warner has this vision, and I talk about how. How do we get there? So Warner tells us, let's go there. Let's go to the future. And Mike worry about the details. And it's important to have the right structure, the right people to do that work. That's why one of the major things I had to do as the Chief Operating Officer is to assess our capacity. If we're wanting to A, achieve C6 to begin with, and then B, have our own legislation for child and family services, I had to ask myself, do we have the right structure? And B, do we have the right people to do all of the work? So, to that end, you've heard Mary yesterday talking about the many things that she has done over the years, all the accomplishments, and everything that she's fighting hard for at the national level. And that needed to be recognized. That needed to be acknowledged in terms of it takes time to do that. It takes time to fight for all of us. It's not something that she can just do in her spare time. And for that reason, we elevated her role to Chief Administrative Officer for Policy and External Relations so that she can focus on that very important work, fighting for our children and family at the national level, ensuring continuity for other services such as youth, early childhood, and community services, while we have a new department, Child and Family Well-being, who would take care of very intricate services such as prevention, guardianship, and most importantly, the C6 that we're preparing to embark on. So that gave birth to a new department called Child and Family Well-being. And I'm presenting to you right now the leadership team that I'm very proud to work with. Cheryl Thomas is the new executive director of this department. She's from the Lake Babin Nation, LBN, and she has dedicated more than 25 years of faithful service to CSFS. Unfortunately, she's unable to join us today, and she sends her greetings and best wishes to everyone here. Good news is, she has very capable directors who would co-present with me later. First up would be Rhonda. If she can stand up. Rhonda, are you there yet? Okay, not yet here, but I'm pretty sure she will make it in time for her presentation later. The Director of Prevention Services, Sonia Rowland, if you can stand up. She's the Director of Guardianship and Resource Services. And then for the C6 that I was talking about, for the child safety team, it's a role that we're still recruiting for. So that director will be responsible for the C6, community wellness, and the designated representatives. We'll talk more about all of those program areas later. All right, so I have been talking about C6, and I'm always mindful that while it's something that I know and most of us know, it may be something that the rest of us or the ones joining us online may need some background on. So C6, at the very highest level, what we're doing right now, I've said from my preamble that right now we're C4. We don't have the full authority for child and family services, especially for child safety matters. So we're preparing to expand our authority from C4 to C6. And in doing that, again, my role as COO is to ensure that we plan, we assess our capacity, and we do things in a methodical way. So in doing that, we have reflected on, well, how many people will we need for C6? I can't give you the exact numbers, but I can tell you it will be more than 100 more net FTEs to do that. And the reality of it for Northern BC, even for our current programs, it's very hard to recruit people, right? There are positions that are posted, and it would take months and months and months to fill them. So considering that, and considering how extensive the work would be, we're going to do a phased approach. So that means we're not going to expand C6 delegation to all 11 nations, all communities, all at once. So we're going to do, I don't want to use the word pilot, because pilot can mean let's try, and if it fails, let's not do it. We're going to do it. So I would call it a phased-in approach, wherein we will start with Vanderhoof and Burns Lake areas, and the nations who have self-selected. So that's the important thing, self-selection, who said, hey, I want to be a part of the first phase of the implementation. And how did we do that? We undertook an EOI process, or expression of interest. So basically, we asked all the chiefs of the 11 nations 2 questions. One, once we get our C6 delegation, let's say it's December 2025 or January 2026, once we get that license to practice C6, do you want to be a part of the first batch of nations who would practice C6? That's the first question. And then the second question was, what particular service delivery areas would you want C6 to be rolled out in the initial phase, right? So do you want to include on reserve, off reserve, within Northern BC only? Or do you want to include our community members in Vancouver and other areas in Canada? So based on that EOI process, we have 5 nations who said, yep, as soon as you get the C6 delegation, we want to be included in the initial rollout. So they are Cheslata, Lake Babin Nation, Nadle, where we are today, Nitayban, and Saikas. Again, I would emphasize this was not CSFS making that decision. It was the nation telling us, yes, we're ready, right? And it doesn't mean that for the 6 other nations that they're not going to be included. They can. Even now, if they come to me and Warner and say, we want to be included in the fold for the first implementation phase, that can be considered. We will have to tweak our plan a bit, but we're open to that possibility. Because again, the principle of this, in everything that we're doing for jurisdiction, it needs to be grounded on self-determination. It needs to be nation-driven. It needs to be the nation telling CSFS, not CSFS telling the nations what to do and when to do it. So now let's talk about the Justice Department. So the biggest step for the Justice Department in this fiscal year is the launch of our on-reserve TDM program, or Traditional Decision Making. So what is traditional decision making in the context of child and family services? In very practical terms, TDM means, let's say, there's an imminent possibility for a child to be removed, maybe because of safety concerns. So yesterday, Sandra presented the clan house, right? What will happen is, instead of removing the child right away, once we have the clan houses up and running, the clan houses could be the refuge for the children. So we can place you in the clan house for now with our clan parents, and we are going to figure out a safety plan on what we're going to do in the long term. While we're figuring out the safety plan, we're going to use traditional decision making. It's a mediation process. So it's basically calling upon everyone in the environment of care of the child. It could be the parents, the elders, community members. They will all come together. They would talk about options. So maybe the child has an auntie or uncle where they could go, right? So maybe there's a better solution versus removing the child and putting them in the home of a stranger. So that's traditional decision making 101. So it is using our values, our principles as Carrier and Sekani people in making those decisions. So, Michelle, no pressure. I'm announcing to the world right now that by March 2026, you should have your 6 on-reserve traditional decision-making facilitators. All right. No pressure. And that's very important because TDM and C6 will go hand in hand. We cannot practice differently. You know, we can have the license to practice C6, but without TDM, we can just end up functioning like MCFD, right? Or the government. So that's why we need to ensure that we have the TDM facilitators in place before we roll out. Now let's talk about some key accomplishments, many accomplishments of comms, and I don't have enough time to go over all of their accomplishments, so I'll just mention some. So one of the things they've done was the Healing Hands campaign, right? So the video that you heard and that you've seen earlier before the start of this AGA, that was one of the products of the Healing Hands campaign, where community members spoke for themselves how CSFS has helped them in whatever challenges that they were facing. And then they also expanded the storytelling, which is important for CSFS. So what's next for comms? They will strengthen nation engagement and external relations, and they will expand the use of digital and multimedia tools to ensure that the nation's voices will be front and center in everything that we do at CSFS. Next is IT, right? So we all love IT. That's the reason we have all this technology and all this set up, right? So they are the silent workers. They're just always in the background, but they make everything happen for us. Over the last year, they focused on addressing cybersecurity concerns, which is huge, given, nowadays, everyone relies on technology, and that means more cyber attacks happening in the background. So they would work night and day during the weekends just to protect the data of our children and families. And I cannot overemphasize my gratitude for your work in doing that. They also began the rollout of our modernized case management platform. When I was talking about C6, yes, of course, there's service delivery component to C6, but a big component of it as well is technology. Where will we house the information for our individuals once we assume all these files from MCFD? So it's a big thing. So it's sometimes an IT can be a thankless job, but it's a big job for everything that we do. Any single activity will require IT involvement. And then the other piece is they have hired a nation-facing role, and I think we have him. If you can stand up. Yeah. So his role is not to support CSFS. His role is to support the nations. So he would go to the nations and see what do you need as a support on the IT front, right? So that's what he does every day. And then looking forward, again, our North Star is to be the center of excellence in indigenous IT. Because again, if we talk about jurisdiction, we also need to talk about preparedness for the nations on the IT front. And then developing tailored IT solutions and training for nations. Next up is housing, capital, and infrastructure. There have been a lot of accomplishments on this area. So I talked about CHRT 41 funding. To date, we have been awarded over $65 million worth of CHRT 41 projects. And that's not even including the clan houses. The clan houses would be over $100 million to date and growing. And then we have also ventured into property management with the 611 Brunswick housing development. So we had the groundbreaking ceremony for that. And then moving forward, the priority of the department of Jason would be to deliver more community-based facilities, like the assistance they have provided to Cheslata. The goal is to do it for every nation, and then to strengthen our property management capacity to match our growth. Next up is Rodney. So Rodney wears many hats, right? So one of the things that he's been voluntold to do is to provide the technical project management support for the Tachik Lake Healing Center. So Tracy provided us updates on that front. So there are many, it's a very complex project, and his role specifically is to ensure that the technical deliverables are completed on time and on budget. Hopefully, moving forward, right? And I'm being told to stop talking. Right? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And then other than that, he's also involved with the jurisdiction, organizational readiness, and the next big project that he'll be involved in, and we have one of the board of directors who will be involved in that, Sarah Green, if you can stand up. It will be the Burns Lake project, right? So it will be our biggest project in the Burns Lake area because it will address both CSFS needs for offices and service delivery areas, right? So it's twofolds, serving our own capacity constraints, addressing that, and then the capacity constraints for service delivery. And that's it. Right? And HR is there. The biggest thing for them was the HR symposium, which she'll talk about. And thank you.
Thanks.